Oh, you don't look like we're going to get very much help from you today, Ollie. No, I think that kind of gives me my answer, doesn't it? But at least if you're on the bed, one, I know where you are, and secondly, you can't fall off the windowsill, so I suppose it's all good really, isn't it? So you have a little nap while I talk to everybody about this very pretty technique on a card. So hi there, it's Anna Rosie Duck Designs here. Thanks ever so much for joining me today. As you can see, we have a very sleepy Ollie with us, and let's hope that continues without distraction that he tends to cause in our videos. What I wanted to share with you today is a technique called the Northern Lights, and I've literally only just come across this. Some may wonder where I've been all the time, but I saw a really lovely card from a demonstrator from Australia on one of the Facebook groups that I follow, and the lady's name is Denise McCabe. So I checked out her videos. She does have one on YouTube about this technique, so do go and give that a look. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. It made me then investigate a little bit further, and there are loads of videos on YouTube for this technique which have up to now have passed me by. So there's plenty of good ideas out there, plenty of people's different take on the way that the technique is done. So I have to say, quite closely following the one that I saw Denise do. I've just sort of given it my own twist, and as you do, just personalise it. But I have to say that it was a beautiful card that she made. So this is the first version that I made, and I actually made this and I've given it to my cameraman, although I've had to borrow it back, but you can have it back when we finish filming. Alright. So that was my first attempt, and I looked at this and I thought actually that would work quite well as sky and water. So that's what I'm going to do, and in fact what I have done on these other attempts that I've done. This one is basically the same layout of the card, which is what we're going to be doing today, but I've used here the Sailing Home die and coordinating. No, let's try that again. I've used the Sailing Home stamp set and the coordinating die to cut this little boat out, and I've used one of the sentiments from the Waterfront stamp set. I have to say this is going to go to a friend of ours, or friends of ours, who went off to Iceland to see the Northern Lights, and unfortunately due to absolutely rubbish weather never got to see them. So I'm going to give this to them when I finish this video, and they can hang on to that until they get the opportunity to actually go and see the real thing again. It also occurred to me that it works quite well if you're saying thank you for something. And I've got a sentiment here about your thoughtfulness brightened my day, which is from the Daisy Delight stamp set. So that the brightened sort of kind of went with the light effect. And then I've also made this basically a get well card, which is a sentiment from the Beautiful You stamp set, and that's basically wishing you brighter days to come. So lots of different ideas to use this technique for. If I put them all together, although I've used the same colours, you can see that not one of them is the same. So that is the great thing with this particular technique, is that you're going to finish up with a slightly different card each and every time that you do it. So the card I'm going to share with you today is ultimately going to be part of a bigger card. So it's going to be part of something that is more than one card, but stuck together, for want of a better way of putting it. So I've got as my base card, I'll apologise in retrospect for that noise. You were moving your stool, weren't you? I've noticed that when you move your stool we get an awful lot of background noise, and when you don't know what's happening, probably people sit there thinking, what on earth is happening? What is that crazy household doing this time? So I've got, as usual, my 8x6 piece of cardstock for my base card. making sure my score line is nice and crisp. And then I'm adding to that a piece of Blueberry Bushel, which is 5 3/4 by 3 3/4. In fact, I think I've got 3 pieces the same size. Yes, I have. So 3 lots of Blueberry Bushel at 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. So let me just start to stick that all together. Got my trusty snail as usual. I'm going to stick that on the inside, just centralising that so I've got a similar border around the outside. Now, because, as I said, this is going to become something more than just one card, I'm going to put a piece of card here on the inside. What I will do when I've actually finished this card, it will be on my Facebook page at some point, and it will also, when it's done, I will share it on whatever video that I happen to be working on at that time, so that you can see the finished article. So that's the inside done at the moment, and then I'm going to put another piece on the front. So slightly more work than I've actually done on the cards, although I did go in here and in all of the cards. They've all got an insert, obviously, for your message. Now that one I just did white onto the black, but on the one down here you can see I've actually given it a background of Blueberry Bushel. So just making a bit of a change, I suppose that's the word. So that's my front bit that I'm sticking down on here. So that's the easy bit done. Now I've got two pieces of 3.5 by 5.5 Whisper White card. One is for the inside and one is logically for the outside. So let's do the inside first. And I'm using this around the corner stamp set, which I've also used on this card. So I've used the hello there and this stamp on that one. What I'm going to use on this one is this stamp. This is a brilliant stamp set for just giving you that little bit of extra detail in your card and around the corner of envelopes, such as on here. So taking my block, and what I'm wanting to do is make sure that I've put, because it's going round the corner, I want it to go on squarely, my stamp. So I'm going to do, what am I doing? I'm doing that one. So I'm just trying to work this out. There we go. There we go. Let's do that one first. So if you can see, I've got a really dark line down here on my grid paper compared to all the fainter ones. So if you put your block up against that, and then using these little grid lines, you can actually line the stamp up on a line, if that makes any sense. So you could just put it down and it could be like that, and it would be no use for going around a corner. So you want it to come It's photopolymer, this stamp set, so it will bend slightly as well into shape. So I'm just going to grab some Blueberry Bushel. You could have used, of course, use your Stamper Artist if you have one. I'm just going to stamp that and see what it looks like. So yeah, that looks not too bad at all. Now, because it's on the edge of my stamp, what I've got to be careful and not do is to put it down and then tilt the block, because then you're going to get this little bit of line. You could, of course, clear that bit off. It's probably the most sensible thing that you could do, but we're going to go for it. I'm going to stick that in this corner. And then I'm going to clean my stamp using my squeegee. So then I want the other corner going this way. So the fact that I've squared that up, that should work then in this corner. And again, I'm going to be hopefully very careful that I don't tip the block as I stamp it down. That's the first bit. So that's the inside of the card done. I'm not going to put any sentiments on this because I'm going to probably add to it when when I make the full card up. But it's kind of, I have to say, a work in progress at the moment. So I'm just going to stick that on the base of the card. Now, I know that was going to be the top, but I'm actually going to put this at the top. Again, that's going to give us a small border of Blueberry Bushel. I have to say there is a very slight line here, which is why I've gone for that down at the bottom, because I'm probably going to just add a little bit more detail there just to take that out of the equation. So onto our Northern Lights. I've got my piece of Whisper White. Let me get that out of the way because I don't really want to ruin that. And for this technique you need one of these sponges, which are £3.75 for 3. Nice soft craft sponges. And what we've done is cut them into 4 pieces. So that was the sponge. What the lady I was watching had actually done, she pinched it together and put some tape on it to make it more like that shape. A little bit more professional, but I'm just going to go with it like this and use it like that. I have to say this is probably not something you want to do when you're going out in the evening, because it is a bit of a messy one. And when I'm involved it's probably even more messy. So I've got some Blueberry Bushel, I've got Pineapple Punch, I've got Night of Navy, Rich Razzleberry and Pacific Point. So I've changed one of the colours that this particular lady used, and I've changed it up to Pineapple Punch, and I've added an additional colour of the Blueberry Bushel. it's always lovely to take ideas from each other and then just mix them up a little bit to sort of make them a little bit more personal. So with my sponge, I'm just dabbing that into the pineapple punch. And what I want to do is I just want to touch it down on my pad so that I actually get the first layer of ink off of it, because otherwise you tend to finish up with a thick bit of ink here and then it narrows down to less ink. It's still doing that, as you can see, but it's slightly, it's less than if you were not blotting it off. That's a good word. So that's my first one. I'm going to put another layer of yellow down here. And then I'm going for one just over here. Okay. So I've got quite a bit of yellow going on there, but there's a reason for that. Let me do this one first. So I'm taking my Pacific Point, show you what the cat's hair that's hanging off of there. And of course, as you do that, you start to get green because you're introducing blue and yellow, which gives you green. So suddenly there's not loads of yellow everywhere. I'll just stick a bit of blue down here. So there I've got a mixture of blues and greens on that last one. And then I'm going to add some rich razzleberry. When I add that down here, I'm actually getting some mauve, some purple elements because I'm mixing it with the blue, but I'm also getting some nice pink elements. Let me just run that down here, and now I'm getting some orange as well as pink and some purple coming on there. So that is the first step. As you see, I've still got a bit of extra blotting in some areas, but that's fine. So the next thing I'm going to do, and the reason I'm doing this, if this was a full inked up pad of Night of Navy, you would probably only just need the Night of Navy because you're not going to get the contrast. Because this is in need of either re-inking or replacing, and I have to say I've gone with the replacing option, and that is winging its way to me as we speak. But this has got some Night of Navy ink on it, but it's not saturated by any means. So by adding this, I'm going to be
putting a depth of blue into it, and then I'm going to be lifting it by adding some Blueberry Bushel. That's the theory anyway. So I've got some of that on my sponge, and what I'm going to do is round the outside, I'm just going to start going round in circles. So I'm actually putting some darker colour all around the outside of it, which is in effect going to give you the sky effect and the land effect, or the water effect in this case. And you get a very pretty grid paper to go with it. So that's my Night of Navy on, and then I'm going to just add a layer of Blueberry Bushel. Now I've been very naughty there because I'm using the same sponge, but because there's hardly any ink on that, I'm kind of getting away with it. But if you were doing it with a nice full ink pad, then the best advice I can give you is to use one piece of sponge for each colour. You see, I'm not going anywhere tonight, so it doesn't matter. How long is that? 22 minutes. Right. We've kind of worked out that the tablet goes into meltdown if we get beyond 30 minutes, which is probably trying to tell me something if we're honest. So I think that when we get to 30, we'll pause it and start again. And that way, hopefully, we won't just get it cutting out when it thinks it will. So I'll just leave it at that. And then what we're needing to do now is to put some detail onto that. And I'm using the Waterfront Stamp Set in conjunction with some Memento ink. Now I'm taking that long stamp, but actually that is designed not to give you a full image. If you look at the picture here, it's got a light and dark element to it, so that's what you're going to get when you stamp it, but that isn't what I want. So I'm going to get over it by adding to it. So sticking that in the middle of my block. So I'm getting as much ink on there as I can. I'm aiming for the middle of the card. And then I'm going to flip that over. Just give myself a line across the middle. And then I've got a black Stampin' Right marker, and I'm literally going to colour that in. So the stamp has given me a bit of structure for the landmass, but I want it to be a solid black colour across the middle. And then taking some Wink of Stella, and I'm literally just going to go right across the middle of that. So that it really has that shining effect that you would hopefully get if the land was being bombarded by the rays of the northern lights. it's fair to say there is some poetic license going on here with this card. So, you see the shimmer on there? No. Okay. It is getting dark. Want it on there, do you? There we go. So I'm now taking the trees from that stamp set, the Waterfront, and I'm also going to be using the little house. Let's put those both on the blocks. How are we doing for time?
25.
25, okay.
26.
Okay, so I'll just get the stamping done. So I'm going to put the trees on and making sure that they go obviously into the ground. I want 3 lots of trees, which is probably going to be a bit crowded if I do all 3, so I'm just going to stamp with these 2. And the same up this end. And then we'll have the full 3 trees in the middle ish. And then this is supposed to be the water, so I'm just going to flip that over. Now it's not going to be exact. What I'm also going to do is just stamp that off, but not that hard. I'm stamping it off gently because I want to remove some of the ink but not all of it. And I'm just going to basically put that down there. So the reflection isn't exact. But it's, as I said before, a little bit of poetic license, I think. So it's very fuzzy, but then that is kind of what a reflection is like, isn't it? So we've got the little house. We're going to put that just in the middle of the trees. This is a good stamp because you can just flip this up and you do get a perfect reflection. Now I want the house to look like it's standing on the ground and not in the air, so I'm just going to now colour that little bit in there. And the same over here. And go over that again with the Wink of Stella. And also because it's water and it's a reflection, what I'm also going to do is just pick out the trees that are part of the reflection. Not the actual trees, but just the element of the reflected tree, so that it picks it up with just that little element of shimmer, giving that effect of a bit of water. Now you're using obviously darker colours here, and the Wink of Stella will act a bit like a blending pen, and you will find that you get a certain amount of coloration on the brush. So before you then use it again on some very nice piece of Whisper White cardstock, make sure that you just rub off your brush on your grid paper or something similar, just to make sure that you've removed the colour of the black. Now in theory some of this is going to be covered up, but I'm just going with all of it because I'm not quite sure at this stage what is going to get covered up. So it's going to be, the sentiment will be somewhere around the middle here. So that is more or less finished. We're going to add some stars to the sky, but do you want to pause it and we'll come back and do that, and hopefully with the video will not have a mind of its own. So a slight miscommunication between me and my cameraman. When I said pause, I thought he was going to, but he was waiting for me to say something else. Probably from personal experience that I never know when to shut up. But anyway, we're back, and I'm just holding it like this so that you can actually see the Wink of Stella that I've added to the card. I've also put a little bit on each of the, it's like looking in a mirror, there you go. I've put a little bit of Wink of Stella on the two little houses as well, just again to pick up that idea of it being a reflection. What we're now going to do is to add some little stars to the sky, and I'm using that, a white gel pen to do that. Now I've bought this from a well-known craft store. Unfortunately Stampin' Up no longer sell these, so I had to go elsewhere. So what I'm doing is I'm just popping some little stars in the sky. I'm not going to be trying to draw Orion or the bear or anything, it's just going to be a random selection of stars. And equally there would be a reflection of stars in the sky, and again in the water. Yeah, you're quite right. I'm glad you're paying attention. I'm glad somebody knows what's going on, especially Sleeping Beauty over there's not joining in at all today. Such a hard life being an Ollie, isn't it? Don't know how you find the energy to keep up with your busy schedule.
The other two couldn't even get upstairs. They were asleep downstairs.
That is very true. Very true. So I'm kind of trying to match them, but not really, if you see what I mean. So that's that bit, and I'm just gonna, not every single one, but I'm just gonna put a splodge of Wink of Stella on some of them, just to again give you that little bit of bling in the sky. It's just a really good excuse for me to get the Wink of Stella out again, isn't it? That is. Just going to put a few lines of Wink and Stella across what is effectively the water as well. So there's lots of sparkle going on there, which hopefully gives the idea of a bit of reflection and whatever that word is when you drop a stone in the water. Ripples. Ripples. So that's the front of it. So let me just stick that on the card. It's hard to imagine that that is actually now was a piece of Whisper White Cardstock. But there's the evidence on the back there. So I should have said earlier, we're doing this in the landscape version. It would be a lot harder to try and get a portrait style because you wouldn't have an awful lot of room for all the different colours. I suppose it could be done. I'll put that on my list, but we'll stick with this for the time being. So that is my finished card, and I'm not actually sure whether I want to add a sentiment to that because in my mind I know what I'm going to do with it. But what I will do is show you how I've made one of the sentiments. I won't necessarily add it to that card. So let's pick a sentiment. Let's go with that one again. Oh, no. I will probably use this one, to be honest. Your thoughtfulness brightened my day. So I've got a little piece of a blueberry bushel there. And that's from the Daisy Delight stamp set. I'm putting that on my block. I've got an Embossing Buddy. And these are brilliant when you are embossing anything because it basically leaves a very fine layer of white powder over the card, which means that it makes the actual embossing powder stick to the bit you want it to stick to and not to bits that you don't want it to stick to. So having got my stamp hopefully straight, I'm putting that into my Versamark pad, aiming that towards the middle of the little piece of card. And then I've got a spare piece of scrap paper over here. And then I've got my white embossing powder. And you see there is very little at all left on that piece of card other than where I want it to be. So I'm just going to put that back in my little pot. But it's always worth having a little paintbrush handy, and obviously not going anywhere near the bit that has got the embossing powder on, but there's some tiny elements of the powder here which I don't want on the piece of card. So just with a paintbrush you can gently remove them. Then you need a heat tool. Did that wake you up, Ollie? Very much like a hairdryer. Do be careful because your fingers will get hot and your fingers will get burnt. So treat with care. And I'm sure anyone, the majority of you watching this are more than familiar with embossing, but if it is a new idea to you, as you heat the powder, you will see it turn from powder to a solid mass, and your sentiment almost has like a plasticky quality. I can't really think of a better way of describing it. but it is set and it stands slightly up from the card. Now in this one I've used my stitched framelit dies. Yeah, no, stitched shaped framelit dies, and I've used that size to cut it out. So I'll just put in my die over there, and just to make sure, although it's on my magnetic platform, just to make sure that it stays where I want it to be. And this is a particularly good tip if you're just using your standard plate. Just going to run that through my big shot. And I have a nice cut out sentiment ready to add to the card, although I'm not putting it on this card. But it would then just add that with some stamping dimensionals, and that's your card completed. If you don't have a big shot, one of the punches would also work really well. That would, if I use that bit where it's been punched out, you can imagine your sentiment's still in the middle there. And you could punch it out rather than using the big shot. And then you'd have that shape to put in on your card. So that's as far as we're going to go with that particular card. As I say, it has something else planned for it, and I will at some point come back and share that with you. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing that technique. It certainly is great fun, and each time it produces a different effect. And if you go onto YouTube, there, as I said, there are a lot of different ideas, and I saw one lady who I can't remember what her name was, I'll rephrase that, but she'd actually just used this as a background card and then just put some birds across it, and that was really, really pretty. So rather than making a scene of it, she just used it as her background and then added sort of like a black outline of birds. So it would work, I think, with flowers. I think the possibilities are endless, as they say. So just a couple of things. Yes, I will try and look in the camera. Just a couple of things. As at the 1st of November, there is a new set of products coming out, which is going to be available on a while stocks last basis. So there will be a blog post going up about that. So on the front of the video, there's a link to my shop and to my website. If you just click on the one to my website, that will take you into my website, and then on the top right hand corner you can access all my social media and my blog, so you can find out all about that. And also I will be featuring details of it on my Facebook page. So as usual, I have no idea what I'm coming back with, but I will be back, and everything apart from the gel pen that I've used today can be purchased via my online shop. So again, my link to that will be on the front of the video. If you've enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you would like to give me a thumbs up, and also if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate that as well. So I think that's it for now. Sleeping Beauty over there. At least look at the camera, Ollie. At least say goodbye to everybody. Say goodbye. Say bye-bye, everybody. I might be awake next time. Oh dear, are we keeping you awake, you poor boy? Right, so goodbye from
So we clicked the button too quick, so bye bye from Ollie, goodbye from my cameraman, who's done a fabulous job as usual, and goodbye from me. But until next time, do take care, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.